a weekly podcast discussing sales styles, techniques, and strategies. Today's episode is called The Trial Close, super effective at gauging your client's interest. Hey y'all, thanks so much for listening. This is Joe Bird, the Sales Perch. Love it. So we're going to talk about the trial close. It's a very effective close. Basically what you're going to do with the trial close, and we're going to get deeper into it, but you're basically just kind of gauging your client's, your customer's interest, and you're using different ways to sort of either get their head into the space of living in it or doing it or using the product you're selling or whatever it is, the service, or you're basically saying, if I were to do this, are you going to buy? So we'll get deeper into that in 2 seconds here. As always, I like to review last week's episode and how we used it intentionally in our own lives, in our own businesses. So the concession close was last week's episode. So what is the concession close? Super quick recap. Basically, you're giving up something in order to get something. So I'll give you a 10% discount if you sign today. Pretty simple. Now it can be used in the sales process, like we've talked about, where you're sitting down with a consumer saying, I want your business. I want you to sign today. Here's a discount. Here's something for free. Here's something to agree today. But it can also be used, and all these closes can be used not so much in the actual sales process, but also throughout everything, throughout the transaction, throughout whatever it is. So I represent a particular seller in a deal, and our buyers came back at a home inspection, and in our opinion, they asked for things that were kind of the dollar. They asked for a concession, they asked for a credit, and it was kind of, frankly, ludicrous. Like the dollar amount really wasn't justified by anything. And here I am talking to my seller. Now I'm advising my client. They're going to make their own decisions. I'm not going to make their decision for them. But we went through the pros and the cons, and we basically just said, hey, if you push back on this number, and let's say we go back at half of this number, like, are you going to regret this if they walk away? So give it up now. Give up it was $5,000. Give up the $5,000. So we're now talking, if you went at half, it's $2,500. So you're only talking $2,500 difference from where you want to counter at and where they're at. But if you give it up now, you get to the closing table. You don't give it up now, you run a serious risk that the buyer says, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to move forward with this, and they back out. What is more painful to you? So are you going to give up the concession to get it done, or are you going to keep fighting to not give it up and maybe lose it, right? And that's what the concession close is in a nutshell. It's basically, do I want to fight the long fight and take the risk, or do I want to go ahead and pay for the reduction of the risk? That's the concession close in a nutshell. Really effective. I advise my client. They made their own decisions. We've agreed to the credit. We're good to go. We're moving forward with settlement. Everything's great. Who knows what the outcome would have been if they had pushed it. So it can be used in everywhere, not just in actual closing at the deal. So today's episode is the trial close. So what is the trial close? The trial close is basically a gauge of interest from whoever you're trying to sell something to, your customer, your client, whatever it may be. So one very common trial close when somebody says, well, okay, I can see that the product does this, but I would like to see how it operates in this setting or how the software would work with these things. Mr. and Mrs. Consumer, 100% I would be more than happy to show that to you. But I want to be frank, that's going to take a fair amount of legwork to get that example done. I just want to ask you this question. If I can show you that this solves that particular problem for you, are you ready to proceed? End of story. End of statement. If they say no, that's not their objection. That may be part of an objection, but that's not what's holding them back. Dig deeper on what's holding them back so that when you solve that problem for them, now that problem doesn't go away. You still have to solve that problem for them. But when you solve that problem for them, you make the sale. So it's kind of a trial, like, are we ready to close or are we not ready to close? Like if the answer is no, you still have to dig deeper. You can also use it in a couple different ways. So in real estate, as an example, You could sort of, ask somebody like, hey, let's say you're showing a house, right? And you could say like, man, this balcony on the bed, off the primary bedroom, covered, shaded, looks great. I know you've mentioned you love to read. Is this something, do you think you could see yourself reading a book here every morning or every evening or whatever it may be? And if they say yes, you've passed a test. Now you know where you are. It's basically a barometer, right? At the end of the day, the trial close is a barometer. Where are you in the sales process? Are you one step away from making the sale, or are you at the starting line? Are you negative, right? So like, do you see yourself living here? Do you see you parking your Ferrari in this garage? Whatever it may be. I also, and we'll talk about this in another episode, but I kind of like to use extremes like Ferrari or, sipping your Dom Perignon or whatever it is, because it in a way it takes pressure off of people because it's so egregiously extreme from where most people are that it's just kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, sure. And we'll go into that. I mean, there's, a hint at that when you're pre-qualifying somebody. One of the ways that I do that is I say, hey, have you had an opportunity to speak with a lender yet? Or are you to plan to pay cash? What am I asking? Are you pre-approved? Right? The cash is kind of crazy for most people, so it just takes them, it brings their guard down, kind of brings you to like a more real thing and just kind of adds humor to it. So love doing that kind of stuff. But again, back to this trial close, it's a barometer. Where are you at in the process? If I do this, are you ready to proceed? If the payments work for you, let's get you talking to a lender. If these payments work for you, are you ready to sign the contract? So that's the trial close. I think it's super effective. There's a whole lot of different ways that you can use this trial close. They're all great. I'm excited to really kind of put this into practice with an intentionality this week as I'm out in the field and as I'm doing things to just sort of gauge interest. I'm actually at a spot where I need to ask for something. I need to actually make the ask. The official ask. We've talked about it. We've beaten around the bush. We've done a lot of things. We've explored it. We've done all this stuff. It's actually time to put pen to paper. It's actually time, to get off the pot, if you know the analogy I'm alluding to there, right? So this is going to come up in my week this week very frequently. And I love the fact that I can slow down, pay attention to it, understand how it works, understand phrasing on it, all that kind of stuff, so that when I put it into practice this week, it will be that much more effective. And hopefully, I get the yeses, the pen to papers, the off the pots that I'm hoping for. I'll report back to you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Sales Perch. Joe Bird, have a wonderful day. To the Sales Perch by Joe Bird. Having sold over 1,000 houses personally in the last 12 years, in addition to running one of the top real estate teams in the state of Maryland, I am looking forward to imparting my knowledge and wisdom, as well as sitting in the trenches with you to learn alongside you.